Following the White House's decision on Jerusalem, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called an emergency meeting of the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, which is made up of 57 Muslim-majority countries. The Turkish president, along with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, and the OIC Secretary-General made statements critical of the U.S. move. They refer to Jerusalem by its Arabic name, Al-Quds.
Dear brothers and sisters, good afternoon to all of you. Allow me at the outset to extend my sincere thanks and highest esteem to His Excellency
Erdogan, رئيس الجمهورية التركية، رئيس القمة الإسلامية، لدعوته لهذا المؤتمر الاستثنائي لقادة الأمة الإسلامية. وشكرا لكرم الضيافة وشكرا للاهتمام، وأيضا تهنئة لنا جميعا في الأمة الإسلامية بهذه القرارات الممتازة التي تم الإعلان عنها. أن تأتي 57 دولة إسلامية وتجتمع هنا
Islamic states to meet and to agree on the same thing in terms of condemning the decision of the American administration to recognize Al-Quds as the capital of Israel and to transfer its embassy to it. There is a 100% consensus on the condemnation of this event, and that it is against all the resolutions of international legality and the resolutions of the Peace and Security Council of the United Nations. This is a single, unilateral decision that will not change anything on the ground. So this is the broad line of the deliberations we had. It is also important to indicate this, because we heard this from more than one president, more than one prime minister or foreign affairs minister. Al-Quds is a red line and it should not be touched, and it is of interest to Christians, Muslims, alike. This is a holy city, and there should be no definitive status for this city, only through negotiations. On the basis of the two-state solution, which is a consensus of among all countries, including Western countries, and also in line with UN resolutions. There will be a political action, a legal action, and a media action in relation to all countries in the world on this particular question. And this will also cover international organizations, including the Peace and Security Council, and this is what you are going to hear about in our decisions. Countries are invited to support Palestine by recognizing the state of Palestine, and this can be considered a reaction to this decision. As indicated by President Abbas, let other countries recognize the state of Palestine, and we believe that this is a very wise decision. There's also the support we decided to give to the people of Al-Quds. We mean here economic support, also different forms of support, economic, educational, or any other type of support. Thank you very much, President. Thank Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Thank you, President Mahmoud Abbas. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. We have come to this summit held following an invitation by President Erdogan. We believe that this is one of the most successful Islamic summits that took place. It deals with a very important and serious matter, and that is the issue of Al-Quds Sharif. Following the decision made by the United States of America to transfer its embassy from Tel Aviv to Al-Quds, and a decision that considers Al-Quds as the unified capital of Israel. This decision by the United States of America contradicts all UN resolutions, especially the resolutions of the Peace and Security Council, which the United States itself agreed to. These resolutions prohibit the transfer of embassies to Al-Quds before the final status negotiations. So the United States itself is doing what it had already prohibited, and this is also the case of all international organizations, including the UN Peace and Security Council. We witnessed the very aggressive, strong reactions from different corners of the world. And this is something that cannot be denied at all. Demonstrations took place all over the world. Also, we heard the voices of condemnation from all societies, at the forefront of which members of the 14 members of the Peace and Security Council, 14 members of the Peace and Security Council, except for the United States, of course, all of them took negative positions against what the United States did in this particular period. Therefore, there was a need for actions by the Islamic Ummah, and the summit which President Erdogan organized in no time here in Istanbul. And decisions will be announced. You will listen to these decisions and resolutions. Our position as follows. The United States is no longer an honest broker of peace. We, as Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims, cannot accept anymore that the United States be a peace broker, because one of the basic requirements for a broker is to be honest and neutral, and not to be biased for one side or another. Another issue is that we are going to go to the Peace and Security Council to make this decision null and void on the basis of the United Nations Charter. There is a provision that enables us to present to the Peace and Security Council for which the United States will not be allowed to vote, and we will go to the General Assembly regarding the membership of Israel, because its membership is not in line with international resolutions. We will go to the Peace and Security Council to consider the question of the full membership of Palestine. The most important issue is what can the Islamic Ummah present to Al-Quds. And the question, how can we boycott Al-Quds and then try to protect it? How can we further support the positions of the people of Al-Quds? I know that there are people who talk about the difference between normalization and the question of Al-Quds. There are people who deal with Palestinians and do not deal with the Israelis, but if we want to protect Al-Quds, yes, this can be done through international and Islamic resolutions, but at the end of the day, we need to support Al-Quds with concrete projects, palpable projects that can enable the people of Jerusalem to remain alive. The aim is to avert any attempt to expel them from the land of Palestine. We don't want Al-Quds as just a set of stones. It is one of the two Qiblas, but if it is not inhabitant, what is the point? We need to make sure that people stay there, and for people to stay there, they must be supported. We need to strengthen their presence there, and we believe this is the mission of all Islamic and Christian countries. Palestine is a Muslim Christian country. Our Christian brothers are in Al-Quds and in Bethlehem, just like the Muslims, and this is a holy city for all Christians around the world. I'm very honored to say that all of them stood up with us, starting with Pope Francis to the Pope Petrus. All of them, all Christian spiritual leaders stood by our side. In Al-Quds, you certainly saw how Muslims and Christians were praying together. People in Al-Aqsa Mosque, people holding up the Bible and the Quran. This shows the unity of our people, and we want to protect this city for us and for them. Once again, we reiterate our thanks to President Erdogan for holding this successful summit, this great summit by all means, and on the basis of all the debate we had so far. Thank you, Mr. President.
Head of State of Palestine, my dear friend, Mahmoud Abbas, Secretary General of the OIC, Mr. Al-Husaymin, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished members of the press, I would like to salute you all with my most heartfelt emotions, with love and respect. The very existential ambition of the OIC is to ensure the protection of the sanctity and the historical status of Jerusalem, Al-Quds. And today, we have convened a very significant, a very critical summit, which becomes the historical mission and the ambition of the OIC. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our guests for having participated in this summit, and I would also like to thank all those involved in the realization of this historical event. With this historical summit, we have once again demonstrated to the rest of the world that Al-Quds is not alone. We have shown this primarily to the owners of the decision in question. You are all aware of the fact that when we have started receiving the first signals of President Trump's prospective statement on Al-Quds, we have started working tremendously as the term president of the OIC. We have tried to clearly accentuate the fact that the prospective decision would release very serious results, leading the entire region into a circle of fire. We have stated multiple times that this decision would be illegitimate, would be unacceptable, would harm the contributions and the efforts for an eventual peace, and it would serve the purposes of the extremists and the fanatics. A United States taking such a decision would no longer be able to play a role of a mediator between Palestine and Israel. I think that process has come to an end. The mediation question here will be an issue that will require the joint discussion by all of the OIC member states in order to identify a new name. And if the occasion would ask for it, we should resort to the United Nations in order to further assess this question, because we need to sit down and lead such a process with the impartial players instead of players taking sides. Despite all of the United Nations Security Council resolutions, this decision was taken by the US administration, and those resolutions had never been respected by Israel. When that was the case, many repetitions were made, and all of the processes seem to have always favored Israel. I'm not sure if the members of the press received these maps, but if I need to give you an example, from 1947 to today, you can see the evolution of the Palestinian territory. Before 1947, of course, we need to think about the 1930s, when the British started taking actions, and this green area used to belong entirely to the state of Palestine. And these little dots you can see here were the settlements of the Jewish communities. When we arrive at 1947, you can see a diffraction plan belonging to the United Nations. And here you can still see Palestine shown as the green area, and the white areas, white zones, are the State of Israel territory. Israel is continuously expanding. Between 1947 and 1949 and 1967, we can clearly see that Palestine has shrunk tremendously, whereas Israel kept on expanding. From there to here, this is a very unfair sharing of the territory. This is a very unjust sharing of territory, because these lands rightfully belong to the Palestinians. Whatever Israel was in 1947, that is what Palestine is today. And Israel has almost settled on the entire territory in question, but it wouldn't be sufficient, and I think they are still investing tremendous efforts in order to take the entire territory. This is what President Trump seems to wish for, because he is the defender of an evangelist and a Zionist rationale. This is the product of such a rationale. This was enforced upon Sultan Abdulhamid, but it was never realized, and they are still trying to do it today. As the heads of states and governments of the OIC and as the executives of the OIC, we are going to be very resolute in terms of our stance vis-à-vis Palestine. Jerusalem, or Al-Quds, will be our red line for eternity, and this is what we have spoken out to the rest of the world, to the global community. Despite all of the warning, despite all of the alerts, the US administration kept on delivering this statement, which is illegitimate, which is immoral, and invalid. This decision is null and void before history, before international law and international legitimacy. Trump's declaration is not valid in our understanding, in our mentality, and in our conscience. He will, in a rough translation of the Turkish expression, he will play and he will dance himself. It's that clear. And this decision is snatching away the rights of the Palestinians over Al-Quds. And I have called His Holiness the Pope Francis, and he has delivered several speeches which are almost overlapping with that of mine. Upon this statement by the U.S. administration, I have invited all of the heads of states and governments of the OIC members to come to Istanbul and partake in this extraordinary summit through correspondence letters. And I have also called international organizations and non-OIC member states whom we know are sensitive towards Al-Quds cause, and they were cordially invited to partake here. And for example, the Venezuelan head of state, Mr. Maduro, was a part of the independence, and he came all the way to Istanbul from Venezuela to this extraordinary summit. I would like to thank him for his presence here, and he is clearly the voice of that region in proximity to Venezuela. This is not a cause of the Muslims only. He came to Istanbul and he has officially declared his support to the endeavors. The custodian of the holy sites in Al-Quds, i.e. Abdullah II, King Abdullah II of Jordan, who happened to be in Ankara at the time, supported us in our endeavors. And he is the term chair of Arab League, and he has partaken in our joint efforts to denounce this statement. And at the CFM meeting of the OIC, which we held in Istanbul yesterday, supported this very strong message that we are communicating to the rest of the world today, which was previously scheduled to take place somewhere else. We have had extensive phone diplomacies with many leaders of countries around the world, including, as I've previously stated, His Holiness the Pope, and more than 30 heads of states and governments and speakers of the parliaments of various OIC states participated at this extraordinary summit. So more than 50 countries were represented at this extraordinary summit. Outside the member states, we've welcomed heads of states and governments who are pioneers in their support that they've provided to Palestine ever since the breaking out of this dispute. And they have responded to our call and our cordial invitation. Although it was organized in a very limited amount of time, thank Allah, praise Allah, that from every point of view, this summit ended up quite powerfully. And I hope and pray that this commitment and this stance will be exemplary for the rest of the world vis-a-vis Al-Quds. And I would like to thank wholeheartedly all of the participants, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished members of the press. Yesterday, the CFM meeting was convened in order to draft the final communique for this extraordinary summit. And the Council put together a declaration of their own and ratified it duly. Following the summit, we have also decided to release a Freedom to Al-Quds Istanbul Declaration, which was produced as Turkey. Have you received that document? As the members of the press, have you received the copies of Istanbul Declaration? Istanbul Declaration was put together by the Republic of Turkey as the host country, which is themed Freedom to Al-Quds. I would like to ask you, have you received the publication on the archaeological research that we have conducted in the holy sites around Al-Quds? Have you received them? Yes, okay, thank you. Today's summit of the OIC is going to avail a historical message to be communicated to the rest of the world as an answer to the provocative discretion put forth by the US administration. getting insistent on mistakes will never benefit anyone. We hope and pray that the U.S. administration will, as soon as possible, turn back from these wrong series of decisions. All of the member states of the OIC are determined to remain in full solidarity with Al-Quds, and we are determined in a very resolute fashion to protect and preserve the historical status and the sanctity of Al-Quds. A new alliance is rising here today. In the Istanbul Declaration, you will find the resolutions passed by the United Nations Security Council on Palestine and Al-Quds. Especially, you will find the reminders on resolution number 478 dating back to 1980. The United States has signed and ratified this resolution in question, which is very important. This is a system whereby the permanent seat holders of the Security Council are being harmed as well. And no other country can have confidence in such decisions taken by the Security Council anymore. The U.S. administration cannot unilaterally make such a decision. How is this even possible? Both Al-Quds and Palestine cannot be left in the hands or up to the mercy of a country in whose history lies massacres such as Deir Yassin, Jenin, Gaza, Sabra, and Shatila. The fate of Al-Quds cannot be left in the hands of a country that exponentially expands her settlements through mercilessly killing civilians, women, and children, feeding on blood. You can see the pictures on these slides. These youngsters are being tormented. Look at this. Something even more important than that. They have recently tormented and dragged away a child suffering from Down syndrome, the pictures of which are not available right at the moment. And I think if we could have seen those pictures right now, the very content of this meeting would have been much more striking. Another picture, a mother embracing her child. The soldiers show up. The soldiers start beating on the mother with the backside of rifles before everyone else around them, snatching away her child, putting that child and others in iron cages. What am I talking about and where am I talking about? I'm talking about Israel. Hey, Trump, are you backing up this country, this Israel? There's occupation here, there's torture here, there's terrorism here. Is this what you're defending? But I find this more and more normal as time goes by, because he would defend such a country as they have been using PYD and YPG against Daesh. The Trump mentality is using YPG and PYD terrorist organizations to allegedly eradicate Daesh presence. But Al-Quds is the city of prophets and it's our first Qibla. It is the sister of Mecca, Medina, Istanbul, Baghdad, Cairo, and Bukhara. Al-Quds is the apple of the eye of the entire Islamic world, and it is the common heritage of the entire human race as Al-Quds, along with all of our international partners, until the U.S. administration turns back from their wrongful decision and until the Israeli occupation ends. We will keep on fighting for the cause of Al-Quds on the basis of law and legitimacy. And we can clearly see that Israel's occupation and attacks are not only confined to the boundaries of Al-Quds. Israel, despite all of the contradictory resolutions and decisions to their favor, as you can see on the maps, still keen on expanding their illegitimate and illegal settlements in Palestine. And since 1947, just like a poison ivy, they have been snatching away the territories of Palestine. We have condemned throughout our summit many actions of Israel, from the destruction of homes to the sieging of Gaza and to the extensive use of force and to the expansion of settlements everywhere. And I think after the current developments, Israel will accelerate their actions. And we have invited the international community to be alerted to these developments which are in our horizon. And we have clearly stated that we will support the rightful struggle and the cause of the Palestinian refugees at all costs. The U.S. administration's declarations and statements of Al-Quds are in violation of the UN resolutions, as well as the very ancient character of the city of Al-Quds dating back to centuries. The protection of the historical character and the status of Al-Quds is very important for the entire human race, as we have accentuated multiple times. Owning up to Al-Quds will pave the way to peace, security, and prosperity in our region and in the rest of the world. And it will be supported by 1.7 billion people living in the Islamic world. I would like to accentuate one more thing. As the organization, we are not going to take a step backwards from insisting on the establishment of a free and a sovereign Palestinian state with Al-Quds as her capital, within the 1967 borders, as previously accepted. And until the occupation ends, we will be very resolute in sustaining our struggle within the borders of law, democracy, and legitimacy. We are inviting all of the international platforms and fora, primarily the UN, to own up to the Palestinian cause and Al-Quds. And similarly, we are going to initiate a very powerful Al-Quds mobilization by reaching out to media, social media, NGOs, academia, and the business media from all around the world, and we are going to mobilize all of our capabilities as the Muslims to strengthen the Palestinian state and her institutions on a global scale. And I would like to launch an appeal to all of the countries around the world to immediately recognize the Palestinian state, which have not done so yet. And we have officially declared that we recognize Al-Quds as the Palestinian capital city. And in our point of view, the capital city of Palestinian state has always been Al-Quds, and it will remain as such. And I would like other countries to recognize Al-Quds as the occupied capital city of Palestine. And I think this is a very important and a significant step to be taken forward by all of our brothers and sisters around the world seeking justice and peace. And we are going to provide all forms of support to our Palestinian brothers and sisters. The U.S. administration's decision concerned all of the Christians, all of the Copts, all of the people around the world with a feeling of justice and with conscience. The occupant Israel administration, and other than other few fanatics, nobody around the world seemed to have backed up this decision and the statements that followed. And as much as the Muslims, even the Christians believe that this declaration was illegitimate, was unlawful, and it was provocative. And it was only serving to the legitimization of the occupation of Al-Quds. I have seen throughout my bilateral talks that whatever my Malaysian brothers are saying, His Holiness the Pope is saying as well. Whatever our African brothers and sisters are saying, the Asian and South American brothers and sisters are repeating. And everybody believes and agrees that the American administration has lost her role as a mediator within the peace negotiations. If the peace process is going to continue, we need to identify other countries as the ones to take up an initiative and which can play the role of mediation, because this decision means the punishment of all of the Palestinians who have sacrificed a lot in order to sustain the peace negotiations until so far. Such an actor as the U.S. administration can no longer act impartially and just in matters leading up to a prospective settlement of the dispute between Palestine and Israel, because the U.S. administration seems the occupation is legitimate and clearly violates international law. My brothers and sisters, in our holy book of Quran, there is an expression which can be roughly translated as, what you think is evil might be good, and what you think is good might be evil. This decision, this statement appears to be of an ugly nature right now, but I hope and pray that it will pave the way to more auspicious results down the line. I hope and pray that it will help unify ourselves and forge a closer solidarity vis-a-vis one another, and we will correct this injustice, and we will, thanks to our joint efforts, lead Al-Quds to freedom. And you will never forget one fact: the Muslims are never in despair. They're never powerless. If you have faith, you will always have an opportunity. You will never despair, never lose hope. If you have faith, there will always be an opportunity. If there's a will, there's a way. Faith, patience, ambition, and struggle will help us surmount all of the hurdles that may come. The Palestinian children walking upright amidst all of the Israeli soldiers are an inspiration to us all. I salute them all. Despite all of that oppression, all of that violence, and all of the state-sponsored terrorism, the Palestinian women who have never given up on the idea of freedom, and the mothers thereof, are our source for confidence and self-esteem. I would like to salute them as well. With the support of Allah, with the support of our brothers and sisters, with the prayers of all of the oppressed, I hope and pray that this struggle will be prevailing and will end in success. And with these thoughts in mind, I would like to once again remember those who have fallen in the protection of Al-Quds. And I would like to extend my condolences to the family members of all of those who have fallen. And I would like to salute all my brothers and sisters participating in this summit, and salute all of the members of the press with my most heartfelt emotions once again.